Chapter 9, in which Eeyore finds the woolery and Owl moves into it. Pooh had wandered into the 100-acre wood and was standing in front of what had once been Owl's house. It didn't look at all like a house now, and looked like a tree which had been blown down, and as soon as a house looks like that, it is time he tried to find another one. Pooh had had a mysterious message under his front door that morning, saying, "I am searching for a new house for Owl, so had you, Rabbit." And while he was wondering what it had meant, Rabbit had come in and read it for him. "I'm leaving one for all the others," said Rabbit, "and telling them what it means, and they'll all search too. I'm in a hurry. Goodbye." And he had run off. Pooh followed slowly. He had something better to do than to find a new house for Owl. He had to make up a Pooh song about the old one, because he had promised Piglet days and days ago that he would. And whenever he and Piglet had met since, Piglet didn't actually say anything, but she knew at once why he didn't, and if anybody mentioned hums or trees or string or storms in the night, Piglet's nose went all pink at the tip, and he talked about something quite different in a hurried sort of way. "But it isn't easy," said Pooh to himself as he looked at what had once been Owl's house, "because poetry and hums aren't the things which you get. They're the things which get you, and all you can do is to go where they can find you." He waited hopefully. "Well," said Pooh after a long wait, "I shall begin 'Here lies a tree,' because it does, and then I'll see what happens." This is what happened. Here lies a tree, which Owl, a bird, was fond of when it stood on end, and Owl was talking to a friend called Me, in case you hadn't heard, when something occurred. For though the wind was blusterous and flattened out his favorite tree, and things looked bad for him and we, looked bad, I mean, for he and us, I've never known them was. Then Piglet thought a thing. "Courage," he said, "there's always hope. I want a thinnish piece of rope, or if there isn't any, bring a thickish piece of string." So to the letter box he rose, while Pooh and Owl said "Oh" and "hum," and where the letters always come, called letters only, Piglet squoze, his head and then his toes. "Oh, gallant Piglet, Piglet, ho!" Did Piglet tremble? Did he blench? No, he struggled inch by inch, through letters only, as I know, because I saw him go. He ran, and then he stood and shouted, "Help for Owl, a bird, and Pooh, a bear," until he heard the others coming through the wood as quickly as they could. "Help, help, and rescue!" Piglet cried, and showed the others where to go. "Sing ho for Piglet, Piglet, ho!" As soon the door was opened wide, and we were both outside. "Sing ho for Piglet, Piglet, ho! Ho!" "So there it is," said Pooh when he had sung this to himself 3 times. "It's come different from what I thought it would, but it's come. Now I must go and sing it to Piglet. I'm searching for a new house for Owl, so had you, Rabbit." "What's all this?" said Eeyore. Rabbit explained. "What's the matter with his old house?" asked Eeyore. Rabbit explained. "Nobody tells me," said Eeyore. "Nobody keeps me informed. I make it 17 days come Friday since anybody has spoken to me." "It certainly isn't 17 days come Friday," explained Eeyore. "And today's Saturday," said Rabbit, "so that would make it 11 days. And I was here myself a week ago." "Not conversing," said Eeyore, "not first one and then the other. You said hello and flashed past. I saw your tail in the distance as I was meditating my reply. I had thought of saying what, but of course then it was too late." "Well, I was in a hurry." "No give and take," Eeyore went on, "no exchange of thought. Hello, what, I mean. It gets you nowhere, particularly if the other person's tail is only just in sight for the second half of the conversation. It's your fault, Eeyore. You've never been to see any of us. You just stay here in this one corner of the forest waiting for the others to come to you. Why don't you go to them sometimes?" Eeyore was silent for a little while, thinking. "There may be something in what you say, Rabbit," he said at last. "I must move about more. I must come and go." "That's right, Eeyore. Drop in on any of us at any time when you feel like it." "Thank you, Rabbit, and if anybody says in a loud voice, 'Bother, it's Eeyore,' I can drop out again." Rabbit stood on one leg for a moment. "Well," he said, "I must be going." "Goodbye," said Eeyore. "What? Oh, goodbye. And if you do come across a house for Owl, you must let us know." "I will give my mind to it," said Eeyore. Rabbit went. Pooh had found Piglet, and they were walking back to the 100-acre wood together. "Piglet," said Pooh a little shyly after they had walked for some time without saying anything. "Yes, Pooh. Do you remember when I said that a respectful Pooh song might be written about you know what?" "Did you, Pooh?" said Pooh, getting a little pink around the nose. "Oh, yes, I believe you did." "It's been written, Piglet." The pink went slowly up Piglet's nose to his ears and settled there. "Has it, Pooh?" he asked huskily. About that time when, do you really mean written? Yes, Piglet. The tips of Piglet's ears glowed suddenly. He tried to say something, but even after he had husked once or twice, nothing came out. So Pooh went on. There are 7 verses in it. 7, said Piglet as carelessly as he could. You don't often get 7 verses in a hymn, do you, Pooh? Never, said Pooh. I don't suppose it's ever been heard of before. Do the others know yet? Asked Piglet, stopping for a moment to pick up a stick and throw it away. No, said Pooh, and I wondered which you would like best, for me to hum it now or to wait till we find the others and then to hum it to all of you. Piglet thought for a little. I think what I'd like best, Pooh, is I'd like you to now and then to hum it to all of us, because then everybody would hear it. But I would say, oh yes, Pooh's told me, and pretend not to be listening. So Pooh hummed it to him, all 7 verses, and Piglet said nothing, but just stood and glowed. Never before had anyone sung Ho for Piglet. Piglet Ho, all by himself. When it was over, he wanted to ask for one of the verses over again, but didn't quite like to. It's beginning, oh gallant Piglet, and it seemed to him a very thoughtful way of beginning a piece of poetry. Did I really do all that? He said at last. Well, said Pooh, in a piece of poetry. Well, you did it, Piglet, because the poetry says you did, and that's how people know. Oh, said Piglet, because I thought I did blench a little, just at first, and it says, did he blench? No, that's why. You only blinched inside, said Pooh. That's the bravest way for a very small animal not to blench that there is. Piglet sighed with happiness and began to think about himself. He was brave. When they got to Owl's old house, they found everybody else there except Eeyore. Christopher Robin was telling them what to do, and Rabbit was telling them again directly afterwards, in case they hadn't heard, and then they were all doing it. They had got a rope and were pulling Owl's chairs and pictures and things out of his old house, so as to be ready to put them into his new one. Kanga was down below tying the things on and calling out to Owl, You won't want this dirty old dishcloth any more, will you? And what about this carpet? It's all in holes. And Owl was calling back indignantly, Of course I do. It's just a question of arranging the furniture properly. And it isn't a dishcloth, it's my shawl. Every now and then Roo fell in and came back on the rope with the next article, which flustered Kanga a little, because she never knew where to look for him. So she got cross with Owl and said that his house was a disgrace, all damp and dirty, and it was quite time it did tumble down. Look at that horrid bunch of toadstools growing out of the floor there. So Owl looked down a little surprised, because he didn't know about this, and then gave a short sarcastic laugh, and explained that it was his sponge, and that if people didn't know a perfectly ordinary bath sponge when they saw it, things were coming to a pretty pass. Well, said Kanga, and Roo fell in quickly crying, I must see Owl's sponge. Oh, there it is. Oh, Owl, it isn't a sponge, it's a sponge. Do you know what a sponge is, Owl? It's when your sponge gets all... And Kanga said, Fruitier, very quickly, because that's not the way to talk to anybody who can spell Tuesday. But they were all quite happy when Pooh and Piglet came along, and they stopped working in order to have a little rest and listen to Pooh's new song. So then they all told Pooh how good it was, and Piglet said carelessly, It is good, isn't it? I mean, as a song. And what about the new house? Asked Pooh. Have you found it, Owl? He's found a name for it, said Christopher Robin, lazily nibbling at a piece of grass. So now all he wants is the house. I'm calling it this, said Owl importantly, and he showed them what he had been making. It was a square piece of board with the name of the house painted on it, the Woolery. It was at this exciting moment when something came through the trees and bumped into Owl. The board fell to the ground, and Piglet and Roo bent over it eagerly. Oh, it's you, said Owl crossly. Hello, Eeyore, said Rabbit. There you are. Where have you been? Eeyore took no notice of them. Good morning, Christopher Robin, he said, brushing away Roo and Piglet and sitting down on the Woolery. Are we alone? Yes, said Christopher Robin, smiling to himself. I have been told, the news has worked its way down to the corner of the forest, the damp bit down on the right, which nobody wants, that a certain person is looking for a house. I have found one for him. Ah, well done, said Rabbit kindly. Eeyore looked round slowly at him, and then turned back to Christopher Robin. We have been joined by something, he said in a loud whisper, but no matter. We can leave it behind. If you will come with me, Christopher Robin, I will show you the house. Christopher Robin jumped up. Come on, Pooh, he said. Come on, Tigger, cried Roo. Shall we go, Owl? Said Rabbit. Wait a moment, said Owl, picking up his notice board, which had just come into sight again. Eeyore waved them back. "Christopher Robin and I are going for a short walk," he said, "not a jostle. If he likes to bring Pooh and Piglet with him, I shall be glad of their company, but one must be able to breathe." "That's all right," said Rabbit, rather glad to be left in charge of something. "We'll go on getting the things out. Now then, Tigger, where's that rope? What's the matter, Owl?" Owl, who had just discovered that his new address was the Smudge, coughed at Eeyore sternly, but said nothing, and Eeyore, with most of the woolery behind him, marched off with his friends. So in a little while they came to the house which Eeyore had found, and for some minutes before they came to it, Piglet was nudging Pooh, and Pooh was nudging Piglet, and they were saying, "It is," and "It can't be," and "It is really," to each other. And when they got there, it really was. "There," said Eeyore proudly, stopping them outside Piglet's house, "and the name on it and everything." "Oh!" cried Christopher Robin, wondering whether to laugh or what. "Just a house for Owl. Don't you think so, little Piglet?" And then Piglet did a noble thing, and he did it in a sort of dream, which he was thinking of all the wonderful things Pooh had hummed about him. "Yes, it's just a house for Owl," he said grandly, "and I hope he'll be very happy in it." And then he gulped twice, because he had been very happy in it himself. "What do you think, Christopher Robin?" asked Eeyore a little anxiously, feeling that something wasn't quite right. Christopher Robin had a question to ask first, and he was wondering how to ask it. "Well," he said at last, "it's a very nice house, and if your own house is blown down, you must go somewhere else, mustn't you, Piglet? What would you do if your house was blown down?" Before Piglet could think, Pooh answered for him. "He'd come and live with me," said Pooh. "Wouldn't you, Piglet?" Piglet squeezed his paw. "Thank you, Pooh," he said. "I should love to." Chapter 10, in which Christopher Robin and Pooh come to an enchanted place, and we leave them there. Christopher Robin was going away. Nobody knew why he was going. Nobody knew where he was going. Indeed, nobody even knew why he knew that Christopher Robin was going away. But somehow or other, everybody in the forest felt that it was happening at last. Even smallest of all, a friend and relation of Rabbit's, who thought he had once seen Christopher Robin's foot, but couldn't be sure because perhaps it was something else. Even S of A told himself that things were going to be different, and late and early, two other friends and relations said well early and well late to each other in such a hopeless sort of way that it really didn't seem any good waiting for the answer. One day, when he felt that he couldn't wait any longer, Rabbit brained out a notice, and this is what it said. "Notice a meeting of everybody will meet at the house at Pooh Corner to pass a resolution, by order to keep to the left, signed Rabbit." He had to write out this 2 or 3 times before he could get the resolution to look like what he thought it was going to when he began to spell it. But when at last it was finished, he took it round to everybody and read it out to them, and they all said they would come. "Well," said Eeyore that afternoon when he saw them all walking up to his house, "this is a surprise. Am I asked too?" "Don't mind Eeyore," whispered Rabbit to Pooh. "I told him all about it this morning." Everybody said, "How do you do?" to Eeyore, and Eeyore said that he didn't not to notice. And then they all sat down, and as soon as they were all sitting down, Rabbit stood up again. "We all know why we're here," he said, "but I have asked my friend Eeyore—" "That's me," said Eeyore, grand. "I've asked him to propose a resolution." And he sat down again. "Now then, Eeyore," he said. "Don't bustle me," said Eeyore, getting up slowly. "No, now then, me." He took a piece of paper from behind his ear and unfolded it. "Nobody knows anything about this," he went on. "This is a surprise." He coughed in an important way and began again. "What knots and etceteras before I begin, or perhaps I should say before I end, I have a piece of poetry to read to you. Hitherto, a long word meaning, well, you'll see what it means directly. Hitherto, as I was saying, all the poetry in the forest has been written by Pooh, a bear with a pleasing manner, but a positively startling lack of brain. The poem which I am now about to read to you was written by Eeyore, or myself, in a quiet moment. If somebody will take Rue's bullseye away from him, and wake up Owl, we shall all be able to enjoy it. I call it Poem." This was it. Christopher Robin is going. At least, I think he is. Where? Nobody knows. But he is going. I mean, he goes. To rhyme with knows. Do we care? To rhyme with where? We do. Very much. I haven't got a rhyme for that is in the second line yet. Bother. No, I haven't got a rhyme for bother. Bother. Those two bothers will have to rhyme with each other. Bother. The fact is, this is more difficult than I thought. I ought, very good indeed, I ought to begin again, but it is easier to stop. Christopher Robin, goodbye. And all your friends all your friends send. Very awkward this is, it keeps going wrong. Well, anyhow, we send our love, and if anybody wants to clap, said Eeyore when he had read this, now is the time to do it. They all clapped. Thank you, said Eeyore, unexpected and gratifying, if a little lacking in the smack. It's much better than mine, said Pooh admiringly, and he really thought it was. Well, explained Eeyore modestly, it was meant to be. The resolution, said Rabbit, is that we all sign it and take it to Christopher Robin. So it was signed Pooh, Piglet, Wool, Eeyore, Rabbit, Kanga, Blot, Smudge, and they all went off to Christopher Robin's house with it. Hello, everybody, said Christopher Robin. Hello, Pooh. And they all said hello and felt awkward and unhappy suddenly because it was the sort of goodbye they were saying, and they didn't want to think about it. So they stood around and waited for somebody else to speak, and they nudged each other and said, go on, and gradually Eeyore was nudged to the front, and the others crowded behind him. What is it, Eeyore? Asked Christopher Robin. Eeyore swished his tail from side to side so as to encourage himself, and began. Christopher Robin, he said, we've come to give you, it's called, written by, but we all know. Well, you see, that, to put it as shortly as possible, is what it is. He turned round angrily on the others and said, everybody crowds round so in the forest. There's no space. I never saw a more spreading lot of animals in my life, and all in the wrong places. Can't you see that Christopher Robin wants to be alone? I'm going. And he humped off. Not quite knowing why, the others began edging away, and when Christopher Robin had finished reading a poem and was looking up to say thank you, only Pooh was left. It's a comforting sort of thing to have, said Christopher Robin, folding up the paper and putting it in his pocket. Come on, Pooh. And he walked off quickly. Where are we going? Said Pooh, hurrying after him and wondering whether it was to be an explorer or what shall I do about you-know-what. Nowhere, said Christopher Robin. So they began going there, and after they had walked a little way, Christopher Robin said, What do you like best in the world, Pooh? Well, said Pooh, what I like best. And then he had to stop and think, because although eating honey was a very good thing to do, there was a moment just before you began to eat it, which was better than when you were, but he didn't know what it was called. And then he thought that being with Christopher Robin was a very good thing to do, and having Piglet near was a very friendly thing to have. So when he had thought it all out, he said, What I like best in the whole world is me and Piglet going to see you, and you saying, What about a little something? And me saying, Well, I shouldn't mind a little something, should you, Piglet? And it being a hummy sort of day outside and birds singing. I like that too, said Christopher Robin. But what I like doing best is nothing. How do you do nothing? Asked Pooh, after he had wondered for a long time. Well, it's when people call out at you just as you're going off to do it. What are you doing to do, Christopher Robin? And you say, Oh, nothing, and then you go and do it. Oh, I see, said Pooh. This is a nothing sort of thing that we're doing now. Oh, I see, said Pooh again. It means just going along listening to all the things you can't hear and not bothering. Oh, said Pooh. They walked on, thinking of this and that, and by they came to an enchanted place on the very top of the forest, called Galleon's Lap, which is 60-something trees in a circle, and Christopher Robin had never been able to count whether it was 63 or 64, not even when he had tied a piece of string round each tree after he had counted it. Being enchanted, its floor was not like the floor of the forest, gorse and bracken and heather, but close-set grass, quiet and smooth and green. It was the only place in the forest where you could sit down carelessly without getting up again almost at once, and looking for somewhere else. Sitting there, they could see the whole world spread out until it reached the sky, and whatever there was all the world over was with them in Galleon's Lap. Suddenly, Christopher Robin began to tell Pooh about some of the things people called kings and queens, and something called factors, and a place called Europe, and an island in the middle of the sea, where no ships came, and how you can make a suction pub, if you want to, and when knights were knighted, and what comes from Brazil. And Pooh, his back against one of the 60-something trees, and his paws folded in front of him, said, Oh, and I didn't know, and thought how wonderful it would be to have a real brain which could tell you things. And by, Christopher Robin came to an end of the things, and was silent, and he sat there looking out over the world and wishing it wouldn't stop. But Pooh was thinking too, and he said suddenly to Christopher Robin, Is it a very grand thing to be an afternoon, what you said? A what? Said Christopher Robin lazily, as he listened to Something else? On a horse, explained Pooh. A knight? Oh, was it that? Said Pooh. I thought it was a... Is it grand as a king and factors and all the other things you said? Well, it's not as grand as a king, said Christopher Robin. And then, as Pooh seemed disappointed, he added quickly, but it's grander than factors. Could a bear be one? Of course he could, said Christopher Robin. I'll make you one. And he took a stick and touched Pooh on the shoulder and said, Rise, Sir Pooh the bear, most faithful of all my knights. So Pooh rose and sat down and said thank you, which is the proper thing to say when you have been made a knight. And he went into a dream again, in which he and Sir Pomp and Sir Brazil and Factors all lived together with the horse and were faithful knights, all except Factors, who looked after the horse, to good King Christopher Robin, and every now and then he shook his head and said to himself, I'm not getting it right. And then he began to think of all the things Christopher Robin would want to tell him when he came back from wherever he was going to, and how muddling it would be for a bear of very little brain to try and get them right in his mind. So perhaps, he said sadly to himself, Christopher Robin won't tell me any more. And he wondered if being a faithful knight meant that he just went on being faithful, without being told things. Then suddenly, again, Christopher Robin, who was still looking at the world, with his chin in his hands, called out, Pooh? Yes, said Pooh. Pooh? Yes, Christopher Robin. I'm not going to do nothing any more. Never again? Well, not so much. They don't let you. Pooh waited for him to go on, but he was silent again. Yes, Christopher Robin, said Pooh helpfully. Pooh, when I'm not doing nothing, will you come up here sometimes? Just me? Yes, Pooh. Will you be here too? Yes, Pooh, I will be, really. I promise I will be, Pooh. That's good, said Pooh. Pooh, promise you won't forget about me, ever. Not even when I'm 100. Pooh thought for a little. How old shall I be then? 99. Pooh nodded. I promise, he said. Still with his eyes on the world, Christopher Robin put a hand and felt for Pooh's paw. Pooh, said Christopher Robin earnestly, if I'm not quite... He stopped and tried again. Pooh, whatever happens, you will understand, won't you? Understand what? Oh, nothing. He laughed and jumped to his feet. Come on. Where? Said Pooh. Anywhere, said Christopher Robin. So they went off together. But wherever they go, and whatever happens to them on the way, in that enchanted place on the top of the forest, a little boy and his bear will always be playing.